just arrived in the Sacred Valley yesterday, and the change from like being in the mountains compared to the jungle is like completely different. I might have to skip one of these ceremonies just to have rest, man.
It's 7 right now.
Alright, so we better get in there and see where this takes us, but yeah.
Oh yeah, see you guys on the other side.
Yeah. See you on the other side.
Shit.
With this ceremony, I would say the intensity was moderate, but with high intensity waves. The dose was 1/3 of a cup, which I think it's a good level, you know, because I found like 1/4 is a little bit too little, and that I get into this kind of limbo state of physical discomfort and not really being able to physically and emotionally release, and 1/2 a cup, as you guys know, is way too much. So 1/3, I think it was good. And I sat down and I was just sitting in silence, because usually, you know, the Icaros don't start straight away. They usually wait about half an hour, give or take, until they start singing. But until then, you're just sitting in silence. And, you know, I started to feel myself cross over to that other dimension. I started to sense very large, slender, dark entities lurk over me. And of course my initial reaction was fear, but I've learnt to center myself and not be too afraid, so I kind of just consciously loosened up my ego a little bit. And then I found out, because I was like looking at this darkness, and then the more I shined my light of awareness to it, the brighter it would become. It would be like sort of like a flower opening, you know. The more I let go of that fear and was able to just really let go, and not let go in terms of letting them consume me, but just letting go of my fear, right, while still claiming my power. And the sensation that I got was that these entities were just kind of waiting for me, and they were sort of excited actually that I was there to visit, and I saw and sensed these entities kind of just reaching over me and kind of offering me water, and one, I think it was like a lady or a feminine sort of spirit that had this platter of like pitchers, like 6 pitchers of juice, and I was like I can't really drink this, but thank you, I guess, I appreciate the offer. And they're just very welcoming, you know. And the second Hermetic principle states that there is a principle of correspondence, as above so below, as within so without. The microcosm is a reflection of the macrocosm, vice versa. So the very fact that there are good and bad humans out there in the world, there are even good and bad plants in the world. There are some that are medicinal and help you heal, and others that will literally kill you. There are some, you know, plants that look all innocent and nice, that they're gonna heal you, but then you touch them and they're like poison, right? It's like the Stingin' Roger.
This here is called the Gimpy Gimpy plant, also nicknamed the Stingin' Roger. It's also nicknamed the suicide plant, because back in the Anzac days, one of the soldiers was camping out in the bush, hung a shit, and they needed something to wipe his ass. He got one of these, wiped his ass with it. The pain was that bad, and it didn't stop. He shot himself in the head.
So in the case of spirits or entities or archetypes or patterns or whatever the fuck you want to call it, there is going to be some good ones and some bad ones, and there's going to be some bad ones pretending that they're good, and there's going to be ones that appear to be bad that are actually good. And of course in this state I was like, I didn't know whether to trust the entities or not, so I decided to just consciously put my ego aside, which I was really grateful for, because I've developed my relationship with the ego. And when I say the ego, I mean like the gatekeeper, protector aspect of my personality. You know, it's the part of you that really slims down and narrows your senses so that you can navigate this matrix without being too overwhelmed by all the unseen energies out there. Because if we were in that psychedelic state 24/7, we'd be like vulnerable babies that couldn't defend ourselves, right? There's a reason why we've evolved to the point where we're no longer in that psychedelic state constantly. Otherwise we'd just be going up to saber-toothed tigers and like, whoa man, look at those fractals. Then you get then you get eaten alive, right? And this is why to go into those states you have to either take a substance like ayahuasca or induce it through breath work or other different modalities to put you in that psychedelic state. And that way you can make sure that you're in a safe environment, either with a guide like a shaman, facilitators, or just a safe room with people who love and care about you, so that you are able to put yourself in that vulnerable state. And so at that stage during this trip I was very grateful for my ego, and I said, listen, I appreciate your existence, I know that you're here to protect me, but at this very moment I'm just going to need you to take a back seat for a while. Which is cool, because usually it's the psychedelic that forces my ego out of the way. This time I consciously chose to put my ego aside, and you know, like, I'll call you if I need you, sort of thing. And so the fear just dissipated, because it started off with, again, that fear, anxiety, that unsettling feeling of crossing the threshold and stepping into that spirit world, because man, sometimes you don't know what's going to happen, right? And you got to be vigilant in that way, but just not in a fearful state. And that's something that I've gone through in my own character arc. And yeah, I started to just communicate with these spirits, and it wasn't like me talking English, and a lot of times with these entities they communicate through like emotion and thought waves that you interpret in your mind. The vibe that I was getting was like these were kind of I tell you what it reminded me of, actually. You know Sassy the Sasquatch from Bigelow Show? And of course it wasn't that light, like, oh, what's going on, Tom? Hey, have a fucking joint, mate. It was more like a much slender, dark DMT dimension version of that. Because again, on the surface level, it can look really scary. But the vibe that I got from the inside were they were just deities just kind of hanging out. There was this like one male sort of entity that was like chilling in a hammock, and not even like a literal hammock, but that was the vibe I got. Maybe an astral hammock. And again, not literally smoking a joint, but that's sort of the energy that I got from it. And it's like, oh, what's going on? I'm like, oh, what's going on, man? And I just remember standing my ground. Before I interacted, I just had to center myself and say out loud, hey, you do not have permission to enter my body. Let me make it very clear. I'm cool to hang out with you guys and, you know, have a chat or whatever, but just, you do not have permission to enter my body, right? And they were cool with that, like, yeah, I understand. And then I asked them, like, how do I know if I can trust you guys, or any entity for that matter? How do I know which ones are the good ones, which ones are the bad ones? And the answer that came back to me was, you don't. You can either trust or don't trust. The choice is yours, you know. You have that free will to interact with certain entities, or, you know, to move to the next room. And I guess it all comes down to your life experience and really your instinct and intuition. And of course these are skills that you need to develop, because not everyone has good intuition, right? And I guess I've had enough experience in this sort of realm where I've gone into contact with fucking scary shit, and also some really healing energy. So I guess, yeah, it just comes back to trusting your gut. And with this, it wasn't that I trusted them 100%, but it was a sort of like a neutral thing. But I felt like they were chill about it. And so yeah, we're just kind of hanging out, chatting, I guess, telepathically. And then I remember this little girl came, like she was like a 10 to 12-year-old, like a swamp creature with like really big eyes, completely covered in mud, and again, on the surface level, looked kind of creepy. But what I sensed was that this was just a little girl who was just grew up in a shitty dark dimension reality, or whatever you want to call it, this swamp reality. And she just wanted to play, man. She was just an innocent girl who was really lonely, and she saw me. She's like, hey, I just want to play, you know. Dude, she looked exactly like that girl in The Witcher video game. And again, in these fantasy worlds, sometimes you look at like this really hideous monster, but they're actually sweethearts on the inside. And sometimes you might see a beautiful light being, but it's fucking, it's like Satan in the inside. So you just always got to keep that in mind, but not put yourself in a fearful state. And mind you guys, this all happened before the first Icaros started playing. Like, I was tripping balls. I don't speak to entities that often, you know, but in this specific situation, I just made sure that I was a witness to the situation and not completely in it. You know what I mean? Like, I could clearly see and communicate with these entities, but it was like watching a movie. I wasn't consumed by it because, again, I claimed my power and I anchored myself. Actually, the vibe that I got was like, imagine driving in the middle of nowhere, like in some fucking isolated town, and then you've got like this family who just never go into contact with humans. And then a tourist comes past, and then they get really excited, and they're like, hey, come, let me give you some, do you want some drinks? I can cook you some dinner, you wanna fuck my wife? Do whatever you gotta do, man. Just because they're so lonely, like, I kind of felt bad for them in that way. I guess I don't get many visitors, I don't know. And yeah, so then after that whole thing was done, I was like, all right, cool, I'm cool to move on now. This was like an entertaining thing. You know, no real profound insights or purging or anything like that. It was just pure mystical entertainment, if that makes sense. Spiritual masturbation, I guess, is another term. Then the Icaros started to play, and then I just exited that realm, and then I started to go into a more emotional, mental, physical purge sort of thing, more introspection, more kind of letting go of shit that needs to be let go of. And this didn't last long because someone started to have an ordeal. You know, one of the guys started to freak out, man. He's just like being very vocal and just started basically yelling, dude, like, fuck, oh my god, and just going on this loop. I don't want to scream here, but he was just seriously just doing it over and over again. I could just hear him like hit his hands, and it got to the stage where he was just fucking just disrupting the whole ceremony, man. And you know, I sent him love, like, you know, do what you got to do, but at the same time, man, you got to be mindful of other people, because I've gone through horrific realms, and even then, most times I'm very quiet and calm. Like, I remember even last week in the jungle when I was like really freaking out. Like, in my mind it was, and on the outside it was like, hey, excuse me, can I get some lemon juice? I'm kind of struggling here. You know what I mean? Because even then, man, you got to be mindful of other people, because everyone's gone through their journey. And I understand in extreme situations, but yeah, just try to be mindful, you know. Try to die in peace. I wanted to yell that, like, dude, can you please just die in peace? But of course I didn't, and I wouldn't, because that's just mean. But yeah, it was kind of intriguing me for a little bit. Completely killed my trip, where I was just no visuals, no psychedelic state. Like, yeah, I felt the, you know, the body load, of course, but, and this again, my ego came to the rescue, right? Again, remember when I put my ego to the side and I told it, or him, or me, whatever you want to call it, I'll call you when I need you. But the ego just kind of came to the rescue, killed my trip, so I was able to deal with these heavy situations. Because if you're in a deep psychedelic journey, and then you hear a freak out like that, it's very difficult to not let that turn into a very dark trip, man, for real. And so, and I thought that the trip was going to be killed throughout the whole thing, but after the, you know, this ordeal finished, you know, one of the facilitators actually ended up holding him down because he was being very disruptive and just fucking really loud, dude. And once that whole thing was over, my ego took a back seat again, and the ayahuasca just kicked up full notch. And I wasn't in a mystical entity communicating state. It was more of a emotional, mental and physical purge, and just gone through introspection, and, you know, like, I was going through like hot and cold flushes, like flu symptoms, but just I just like feel like I was just releasing all this nasty, gucky, toxic waste that I've accumulated throughout my life. And, you know, I could feel it in the room. It was really heavy, and usually night 2 is the most intense, you know, so there was a lot of purging, and I could feel it, you know. and I was like, my body was like a conduit for all these energies to pass through. And of course, if you resist and you don't allow that to go through you, it's just you're just going to make it tough on yourself, and it's going to be more painful. It'll come in waves. Like, yeah, a lot of, for a few hours actually, was very challenging, especially physically, man. It was like, I remember just like purging, like vomiting into my bucket, and just feeling all these like, I don't know what you want to call it, traumas, unwanted energies, what have you, I don't know. Again, I've stopped trying to like analyze these things, at least during the moment, you know, because sometimes 6 months could pass, 12 months, 5 years, and then you might put together these dots and it might make sense. But during the trip, it's not very useful to analyze it at that moment, right? You just let, you know, you got to let your process unfold itself. And you know, I know just before I said you can't surrender and let go to everything, but there's a very distinct difference between surrendering to your own emotions and traumas and, you know, purging, and surrendering yourself to these unknown entities. You know, it's a completely different ballpark. This was, I wasn't going through any of that kind of shit. Like, yeah, I was tripping balls, and again, it's hard to remember a lot of it, you know, which is fine, but I remember some parts I was going through like stomach cramps, and I was like physically moving it so that, and then I could feel the energy flow through, and then I'd throw up, and you know, I'd be tossing and turning, going through this psychedelic odyssey in my mind, and journeying through this thing called life, and thinking about the collective and where we are at this moment, my own life purpose, and going through this process of purification, sort of like this hot iron hammer smashing a sword, and it hurts, and there's a lot of friction and resistance and heat, but you just fucking keep hitting it until you have this fucking amazing nice sword that you can slay your dragons with, which metaphorically represent your own demons and resistance and the villain inside you, I guess, you know. And then, you know, there are many nuances of what dragons mean, but this is sort of the vibe that I was going through. And yeah, it was really good, man. And then Ivan, man, he's like one of the Mexican facilitators, who's a master musician, playing his, oh man, he was playing this beautiful guitar and singing. Oh, it was fucking amazing, man, because like sometimes the Chamonix cross, they're incredible and absolutely essential to the ceremony, but sometimes it's really intense, and then when you've got like this nice melodic medieval sort of type music, it's just it just puts everything at peace, at ease, and it's, once you get out of it, it's like you feel like a warrior who's just survived war, and you just feel immense gratitude and peace with life that you went through it, and you just you get to just enjoy this, you know. So this was a few hours, right, of these challenging waves of purging that was happening, and then I was like, I'm good, I love this, I'm fucking just happy enjoying this music. And then this would go on, he'd, you know, go from guitar to playing like the harp, to playing like the hippie drum, like doo -doo. I don't know what it's called, you guys will have to tell me in the comment section. And yeah, I was like just dancing, moving, letting my body flow, and I'm just, you know, enjoying this, you know. You don't have to take this shit so seriously. I mean, when the challenging purge waves come, then woo, got a bit of a voice break there, but yeah, when those challenging purging waves come, then yeah, surrender to it, allow it to flow through you, and just let that shit go. Again, it's that process of purification, but don't take it too seriously. And sometimes even just laughing helps, even if you don't mean it. You know, I've talked about this before. I've done this work enough where I'm not trying to heal some fucking crazy drug addiction or depression or PTSD, or I guess psychedelic PTSD, but I've actually rekindled my relationship with ayahuasca, and I've healed a lot of that. I do apologize if I'm just ranting now and overreacting, but yeah, this is just how I felt, you know. So at the end of the day, I'm just expressing what I'm feeling at the moment, and because I really like chronicling these psychedelic experiences, so that way I can look back on this and see kind of what sticks and how much my opinion changes later down the road. I think it's important, you know. But anyways, I was going through a very heavy ego backlash, just getting pissed off, and eventually, you know, it calmed down. Ivan started playing music again with this harp. It was like this medieval Witcher type theme music, and I was transported in that universe. And then Dakota came, and we just fucking, you know, had this bromance moment, and I was like really, yeah, I'm just really grateful that, you know, I had a friend here, and, you know, he's a good guy, and yeah, I'm appreciative of his existence and friendship, and yeah, we just had a really beautiful moment together, just kind of just like listening to this beautiful harp, man. Oh, so good. I was still going through like this, I was in and out of this dream state, and I just passed out and I woke up and here we are. So this will be my last ayahuasca ceremony for this run. We still have one more, but I'm gonna give my body a rest. I'm glad that I did drink, actually, even though I was initially not going to. And it was actually, yeah, well, I mean, of course I had heavy moments, but overall it was actually really beautiful. I definitely felt like I was going through purification, and I leveled up in terms of my strength and being able to navigate through these realms and being able to transmute anxiety into excitement, you know, fear into love, tragedy into comedy, horror into beauty. And this is a lifelong practice, of course, and sometimes these psychedelic spaces are like these testing grounds, sort of like playing a video game, or, you know, fighting demons and bosses, and it's like it can be really difficult. Sometimes you'll die a few times. Sometimes you'll get really hurt. Sometimes you're gonna destroy your favorite weapon. But if you keep persisting and you defeat that boss battle and you defeat those enemies, man, you get some really nice loot. Sometimes you get some cool magical abilities. You get experience points which you can allocate to certain attributes like, you know, strength, wisdom, knowledge, empathy, etc., etc., etc. And yeah, it's good shit, man. Really good shit. Ayahuasca is a powerful medicine, man. And I'm glad I know my dose now, which is the third, so. Whew. Good news is that I've healed from this PTSD, and I'm happy. And it's, yeah, it is inspiring seeing people go through their transformation, and it's really cool seeing people have their very first ayahuasca experience and, you know, enter this realm for the first time. So, but I also have some concerns in that people go too far into this, and, you know, it's part of the natural process. Again, I think, you know, outside of the facilitators, or some of the facilitators, I've had the most experience with ayahuasca, and not the most in terms of like the most journeys, but just time to think about my own cognitive dissonance and biases and spiritual traps that I've fallen into, and being more vigilant and trusting myself and being more grounded. And this took a lot of fucking work, and not just work tripping, I mean work in the integrating in the real world. That's the most important, you know. Some people think that 50% of the gains that you get is from the trip and 50% is from integration, but I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I think it's 95% integration, because you can have the most profound trip in the world, but if you don't integrate, if you don't write shit down, and you don't talk about it and share with other people, and then you don't implement certain practices in your life to keep this thing going, and you don't just go back into your old life and just restart these old habits, it's just going to be like this fleeting dream that you vaguely remember. So yeah, I don't, you know, it might not be 95%, I'm just making up a number here, but it's definitely the vast majority of the gains that you get is from the integration. And so this time around, when I'm going in this ayahuasca space, I'm always thinking about that shit. And even straight after the ceremony, I'm always writing this down, even making this video as part of the integration. It's not all of it, it's still a small part, but it's about implementing practices in the real world. Otherwise it's just spiritual masturbation, right? And just like masturbation, your brain thinks that you're having sex, but you're not. You're just playing with yourself, pretending that you're having sex in your mind. So it's better to actually just go out there in the real world, cultivate your inner strength, develop yourself as a person, and be the person that you want to be. And then you're going to attract the ladies, or the men, you know, for those ladies who are watching. and then you're going to be more attractive, and then you're going to go out there in actual real world, interact with real humans, and then have sexual intercourse that way. I'm sorry, I'm like day 35 of no fap, so my mind is going to sex a lot, so. But you know what I mean with the, I hope you guys know what I mean by this analogy. Instead of just masturbating, go out in the real world and have sex. I don't know. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna have a rest now and just chill out, so. Much love to all of you guys. Thanks for watching, and catch you on the next video. Peace out.
I also want to give a shout out to my good friend Jason Stephenson, who does awesome free guided meditations. It's always good to do some meditation training and prep your mind for these type of psychedelic experiences. So go check out the description box below, click the link, and I'll see you on the other side. Peace.
It's been awesome.
Thank you, Arcana.
Love. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Frog life.
Frog life.
Frog life.
So yeah, that's it. Crazy journey. It's been about 4 months since our last ayahuasca ceremony, and we are currently sitting in the cold Melbourne winter, and we're on lockdown right now. Like many places in the world, it's been freaking chaos, a lot of craziness, but a lot of transformation, rebirth. Gives us a lot of time to reflect, and yeah, man, I just thinking about the journey still, like, kind of, it brings me back, and just how fantastical and epic this whole journey has been. Not just ayahuasca, just like, you know, being a human and going on this hero's journey. But anyways, I really appreciate you watching the series, and hope you enjoyed it. And if you did receive any value from it, then feel free to leave us a like, subscribe to this channel, share it with your mates. It really does help us out. And if you are watching this and you're interested in attending Arcana, then feel free to check the description box below. You can use promo YMT, get some cool freebies like a DMT light session or an isolation tank. We're going to do one in Mexico in April, but of course, you know, a whole pandemic happened, so we had to postpone that until mid-August. But if you are interested in attending these special retreats like the one in Mexico, then feel free to go on yourmatetom.com, sign up to our email clan, and this will just keep you updated on these kind of special events or releases, things like this. And of course, I've got to give a massive shout out to all our legendary patrons, man. Like, seriously, what would I do without you guys? You guys are truly the lifeblood of this channel and really help inspire us to keep going. So from the bottom of my soul, I just want to thank you guys so much. I never take you guys for granted, and I'm always thankful to have just amazing people like you supporting us. So seriously, fucking legends. Keep exploring, be safe, and I'll catch you on the other side. Peace.